Did you know that 99% of seniors who suffer falls were making at least one mistake that could have been avoided? Loss of balance in older adults does not happen suddenly. It gives warning signs, sets in slowly, and is often fueled by habits that seem harmless. But what is really behind it? In this video, we will reveal the 5 main mistakes that cause almost all seniors to lose their balance, often within their own homes, without anyone noticing until it is too late. If you have parents, grandparents, or a caregiver, or simply care about aging with quality of life, pay close attention. This information can prevent falls, hospitalizations, surgeries, and even save lives. Stay until the end, because every detail can make all the difference. Let's get started. Tell me where you are and how old you are. If you are new to the channel, leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss any videos. When it comes to falls and loss of balance among older adults, most people tend to think of neurological diseases, muscle weakness, or even vision problems. And while these factors are indeed relevant, there is one element that goes unnoticed by most families and even some healthcare professionals: footwear. Yes, shoes, seemingly simple, everyday, and harmless, have a direct and profound impact on the safety and balance of older adults. Improper footwear can turn every step into an imminent risk, and that is exactly what we need to think about. As we age, the body undergoes a series of natural changes. Muscles lose strength and elasticity, joints become stiffer, reflexes slow down, and sensitivity in the feet may decrease due to conditions such as neuropathies, diabetes, or poor circulation. In this scenario, shoes should function as an extension of the body, providing support, stability, and protection. However, what we see in practice is exactly the opposite. Many older adults continue to wear shoes that are not designed for their physiological needs. These shoes are loose, slippery, with very smooth soles or heels, which hinder more than they help. The first big mistake is wearing slippers and open sandals indoors. This type of footwear, very common among the elderly because it is comfortable and easy to put on, rarely provides the support needed to keep the ankle stable. Since they do not completely enclose the foot, these styles promote sprains, trips, and slips, especially on smooth floors or when going downstairs. In addition, many slippers and sandals have soles made of hard, non-slip materials, which further increases the risk of slipping. Instead of promoting safety, these shoes create a false sense of comfort that can be dangerous. Another critical point is the use of shoes that are worn out or have worn soles. Over time, shoes lose their internal structure, no longer providing stability when walking. When worn unevenly, the sole compromises body weight distribution and affects gait alignment. An unstable footstep creates a chain reaction of imbalance. The knees, hips, and spine feel the impact, and the feeling of instability grows. It's like walking on an unstable surface every day, accumulating small risks that eventually turn into a fall. Heeled shoes should also not be ignored, even if the heel is low. Although many older women have been wearing heels since their youth, it is important to understand that with age, raising the heel shifts the center of gravity forward, which compromises posture and significantly increases the chance of imbalance. In addition, heels reduce the area of contact with the ground, making the base of support smaller and more unstable. For an already fragile body, this is an invitation to fall. And there is an additional aggravating factor. Many older adults persist in wearing inappropriate shoes for emotional or economic reasons. A shoe can represent an important memory, a gift from a loved one, or simply the one that still fits. In other cases, for financial reasons, many are unable to invest in orthopedic or better quality shoes. This reality needs to be viewed with sensitivity. It is essential that family members, caregivers, and healthcare professionals pay attention to these details and provide empathetic and practical guidance. When choosing good footwear for older adults, stability should be the top priority. The ideal shoe should have a non-slip sole, firm heel support, Velcro or lace closure for a secure fit, and a structure that completely surrounds the foot, providing lateral support and preventing the shoe from coming off easily. The insole should be soft but not too soft, so as not to compromise movement control, and the outer material should be sturdy but flexible enough to allow for natural movement when walking. It is also essential to respect the individuality of each elderly person. Some may need custom orthopedic insoles, while others may have foot deformities and require special shoes. In all cases, it is worth remembering that the main objective is not just to put something on their feet, but to ensure autonomy, safety, and quality of life. Good footwear is not just an item of clothing, it is a tool for prevention and care. Therefore, if we really want to reduce falls and preserve the balance of our elderly, we need to start looking down, literally. Observe what they wear, how they walk, whether they drag their feet or trip frequently. Small signs reveal great dangers, and often what separates safety from an accident is precisely what is between the foot and the ground, the shoe. Choosing well is an act of love, attention, and above all, responsibility. Little is said about it, but the human body was made for movement. Since ancient times, survival has depended on physical action: running, climbing, lifting, hunting, farming. Movement was the language of the body, the purest form of health and connection with life. However, with the advancement of technology, urbanization, and comfort, society began to slow down, and among those most affected by this slowdown are the elderly. Sedentary lifestyles, the almost silent absence of physical activity, have become one of the leading causes of loss of balance, falls, and functional decline among older adults. And what is most alarming is that this is often considered normal, accepted as an inevitable part of aging, but it is not. When an older adult stops moving regularly, the body begins a slow and continuous process of regression. Muscles, which need constant stimulation to maintain their strength, begin to atrophy. The muscles in the legs, especially the thighs and calves, lose volume and power, which directly affects the body's stability. With less strength, each step becomes more fragile and less secure. Legs falter where they once stood firm, and the simple act of getting up from a chair, climbing a step, or walking on uneven ground becomes a considerable effort, often dangerous. But a sedentary lifestyle doesn't just affect the muscles, it also compromises the nervous system, which depends on movement to maintain motor coordination and balance. Without frequent motor challenges, such as changes in direction, stretching, long strides, and proprioception exercises, the brain begins to lose its efficiency in processing bodily stimuli. The response to imbalances becomes slower, reflexes diminish, and situations that would previously have been easily corrected, such as a slight stumble, now end in severe falls. There is also another, perhaps even more cruel impact, the psychological one. Lack of movement creates a feeling of incapacity. The body stops, and with it, the mind begins to withdraw. The elderly begin to doubt their own strength, and their confidence in walking diminishes. Fear of falling arises, which in itself further limits movement. It is a vicious cycle. Fear leads to less movement, the body weakens, and the risk of falling increases, further fueling the fear. Faced with this reality, many older adults prefer to avoid leaving their homes, stop participating in social activities, and refuse invitations to walk in the park or climb stairs. Gradually, their world shrinks, their independence is lost, and their lives are reduced to a few square meters. The key to breaking this cycle lies in physical exercise, but not just any type of exercise. It is important to understand that the elderly body no longer responds in the same way as a young person's. It requires specific adapted activities that strengthen the muscle groups essential for balance, improve joint mobility, and reactivate body awareness. Exercises such as assisted walking, adapted Pilates, water aerobics, lightweight training, balance training, and functional movements are essential. More than just increasing strength, they help the body relearn how to move safely and confidently. In addition, it is essential to incorporate exercise as part of the routine, not as a one-time obligation. Movement needs to become natural and enjoyable again. To achieve this, it is important to respect each older adult's limits, work with small, progressive goals, and above all, offer continuous encouragement. Families, caregivers, healthcare professionals, everyone has a role to play in this process. We need to create environments where movement is possible, safe, and encouraged. An active older adult is not just someone who exercises. They are someone who has rediscovered the freedom to move, and with it, regained some of their dignity and independence. Finally, we must remember, aging does not have to be synonymous with frailty. The body can indeed age with vitality, balance, and a steady gait, but this requires action. A sedentary lifestyle should not be accepted as the natural fate of old age, but rather fought as the silent enemy that it is. Because every muscle that is strengthened, every step taken with confidence, is a cry of resistance against inertia and a vote in favor of life. Many believe that the greatest danger to the health of older adults lies outside, on busy streets, uneven sidewalks, crowded buses. But what few realize, and many only discover when it is too late, is that the most dangerous place for an older adult may be precisely where they should feel safest, their own home. The home with its familiar rooms, memories scattered across the shelves, and comfortable routines often hides silent traps that compromise balance, dramatically increase the risk of falls, and can turn everyday life into a minefield. For a young or middle-aged adult, tripping over a rug or slipping on a wet floor may be just a minor scare. But for an elderly person, whose body already faces natural limitations in muscle strength, reflexes, and postural stability, these small oversights can have devastating consequences. A fall can result in fractures, head injuries, prolonged hospital stays, and most seriously, loss of independence. Often, after a single fall, older adults never walk the same way again. It is a fine line between safety and vulnerability, drawn by details that often go unnoticed. Let's start with rugs, those seemingly harmless accessories that are scattered throughout homes for decoration, warmth, or to protect the floor. In many homes, rugs are not properly secured, slide easily, and form folds or ridges that act as real traps for tired feet and shuffling feet. A simple, loose rug can be enough to unbalance an elderly person when getting out of bed or going to the bathroom at night. And speaking of nighttime, another critical factor is lighting. Dark hallways, burned-out light bulbs, distant lamps, all of these contribute to disorientation and increase the risk of tripping. Vision is no longer as sharp, and in the dim light, any shadow or poorly marked step can pose a real danger. Furniture also deserves special attention. It is often poorly positioned, around, occupying narrow passageways with sharp corners and heights that do not allow for safe support. Chairs that slide, coffee tables that are in the way, bookshelves with objects at risky heights, all of this creates a hostile environment for someone with reduced mobility. And when we talk about elderly people who use canes, walkers, or wheelchairs, these obstacles become even more dangerous as they make maneuvering difficult and increase the physical effort required to perform simple tasks. The bathroom, then, is a whole other story. It is where an impressive number of falls occur, often with serious consequences. Wet and slippery floors, lack of grab bars, rugs that accumulate water and slip easily, low toilets, and poorly designed showers are just some of the elements that put the physical integrity of the elderly at risk. A shower, which should be a moment of relaxation and hygiene, can become a stressful and dangerous event if the environment is not properly adapted. But not all dangers are physical or visible. The sense of pride and independence that many older adults carry with them makes them avoid asking for help or communicating their difficulties. They prefer to continue climbing unsafe stairs, sitting on low couches, or reaching for objects on high shelves because they don't want to bother anyone. And so the environment that could be adjusted with little effort remains the same, a silently hostile territory. This is where the responsibility of family members, caregivers, and healthcare professionals comes in. Observing carefully, listening with empathy, and acting wisely are essential attitudes for making the home a truly safe space. Fortunately, the solution is within everyone's reach. Small interventions, often simple and accessible, make all the difference. Secure rugs with non-slip tape or remove them completely. Install grab bars in the bathroom and put night lights in hallways and next to the bed. Replace low furniture with more ergonomic options and reorganize spaces to facilitate movement. Assess the flooring and, if possible, replace it with less slippery materials. Encourage the use of appropriate footwear even indoors. Every detail corrected is one less barrier between the elderly and a potentially fatal fall. Therefore, if there is one warning that needs to be made urgently, it is this. Danger is not only outside the home. It can be found in small habits, forgotten objects, and aesthetic choices that ignore functionality. Home should be a shelter, not a threat. And with attention, care, and a few adjustments, it is possible to transform the home environment into a true ally in the fight against falls. Because, in the end, what is at stake is not only physical safety, but the quality of life, autonomy, and dignity of those who have already traveled so many journeys and deserve to walk steadily until their last step. When we think about loss of balance in older adults, we rarely associate this problem with sensory health. We usually talk about muscle weakness, lack of exercise, or even advanced age. But there is something even deeper and often overlooked: the impact of vision and hearing on body stability. The truth is that our balance depends directly on how we perceive the world around us, and when that perception fails, even subtly, the risk of falls becomes a constant threat. In this case, the body not only stumbles over objects on the floor, but also over the limits of what it can no longer see or hear clearly. Vision is undoubtedly one of the main pillars of human balance. It is through our eyes that our brain calculates distances, identifies obstacles, measures the depth of a step, and adjusts the position of our feet on an uneven surface. A simple reflection of light or a shadow can completely change the way we interpret space. However, with advancing age, visual ability begins to deteriorate silently and progressively. Cataracts, macular degeneration, glaucoma, and presbyopia are just some of the conditions common among the elderly, which reduce the field of vision, blur the sharpness of images, and compromise contrast and depth perception. Imagine an elderly person walking through their home in the evening when the light is already dim. If their eyes cannot clearly distinguish where the carpet ends or where the stair step begins, they can easily trip. The simple task of stepping down a stair or reaching for an object becomes a challenge fraught with uncertainty. Worse still, older adults often don't realize how limited their vision is because the adaptation to vision loss is gradual and almost imperceptible. They get used to seeing less, but this new standard is dangerously insufficient to maintain safety when moving around. Hearing, on the other hand, plays a less obvious but equally vital role in balance. The inner ear, more precisely the vestibular system, is responsible for sending signals to the brain about the position of the head and body movements in space. When this system suffers some kind of damage, which is common with aging, the brain receives confusing or insufficient information, resulting in dizziness, a feeling of imbalance, and even vertigo. In addition, external hearing, which allows us to hear sounds in the environment, also indirectly influences our orientation. An older adult who does not hear well may not perceive sounds that indicate indicate movement, such as approaching footsteps, car braking, or even the noise of an object that has fallen and represents a danger on the floor. Unfortunately, many older adults live with hearing loss for years without seeking help, some out of embarrassment, others out of denial, and many because they do not have access to adequate hearing health services. They avoid using hearing aids because they find them uncomfortable or because they believe they don't really need them, but by silencing the world around them, they lose an important spatial reference and considerably increase their risk of accidents. Hearing loss can also lead to social isolation, which reduces interactions and, as a result, decreases motor and cognitive stimuli. Once again, an indirect factor that contributes to loss of balance. The sum of these sensory deficits forms an almost invisible trap. Older adults begin to move uncertain, avoid leaving the house, slow down when walking, stare at the ground in an attempt to compensate for their limited vision, and are startled by sudden noises because they cannot locate them clearly. All of this creates a tense, defensive, hesitant movement pattern, exactly the type of body posture that is most conducive to falls. The good news is that much of this can be prevented or mitigated with simple interventions. Regular visits to the ophthalmologist and otolaryngologist should be part of routine care for the elderly. The use of up-to-date prescription glasses, corrective surgeries such as cataract surgery, well-adjusted hearing aids, and above all, family encouragement to use these resources naturally make all the difference. In addition, lighting in rooms needs to be improved, and sounds in the home should be clearly audible, without excessive noise, but with sound elements that aid orientation. Taking care of an older person's vision and hearing is not just a matter of seeing and hearing better. It is about offering them a safer, more understandable, and above all, more dignified world. It is about allowing them to walk with confidence, to feel the ground beneath their feet, and to perceive what is going on around them with clarity and autonomy. Because balance does not begin with muscles. It begins with how the body interprets space, and when the senses fail, the body inevitably becomes unbalanced. There is an increasingly common scene in the homes of elderly people: drawers full of pills, boxes stacked on top of the refrigerator, colorful cards on the nightstand, and a handwritten list of schedules for taking each one. At first glance, all of this seems like a manifestation of care. After all, medications save lives, treat diseases, and relieve pain. But there is a dark side to this story, a blind spot that has been responsible for countless falls, hospitalizations, and even deaths among the elderly. The use of medications without proper medical supervision. And we are not talking about exaggerations, but a silent reality that often begins with good intentions and ends in imbalance, dizziness, and loss of autonomy. An older person's body is different. Aging brings with it a series of physiological changes that alter the way the body absorbs, distributes, metabolizes, and eliminates chemicals. The liver works more slowly, the kidneys lose efficiency, circulation decreases, and muscle mass decreases. This means that the same dose of a medication that worked well at age 40 may be excessive, even toxic, at age 75. And yet, many older adults continue to take the same medications in the same amounts without anyone periodically reviewing their prescriptions. It's like driving an old car using the instructions for a new car. At some point, something is going to go wrong. Among the most common side effects of many medications are drowsiness, mental confusion, dizziness, hypotension, low blood pressure, and loss of reflexes. In other words, these are symptoms that directly compromise balance. Blood pressure medications, antidepressants, anti-anxiety drugs, anti-allergics, sleeping pills, and even common painkillers can cause a feeling of physical or mental instability that makes older adults more vulnerable to falls. And when several of these medications are used at the same time, a practice known as polypharmacy, the risk multiplies. Polypharmacy is now one of the greatest threats to the health of older adults. Many take 5, 7, even 10 different medications a day. Some were prescribed by doctors, others were inherited from old prescriptions, and some were suggested by neighbors, friends, or TV commercials. There are those who self-medicate frequently without considering the interactions between substances, and still others who change doses on their own, increasing or decreasing them as they feel the need. The result is a veritable chemical cocktail in the body, whose side effects accumulate and become confused with the symptoms of aging themselves. The elderly begin to feel weak, disoriented, lightheaded, but instead of investigating their medications, many believe that it's just old age. Another aggravating factor is the habit of taking medications on an empty stomach or with inappropriate foods, which can enhance or reduce their effects, as well as cause gastrointestinal discomfort, another indirect cause of falls. Hypoglycemia, for example, when blood sugar levels drop too low, can be caused by poorly managed diabetes medications, leading to weakness and fainting. And there are also cases in which older adults with vision problems or mild mental confusion take the wrong medication or take the wrong dose by mistake. Unfortunately, many of these situations could be avoided with something simple: regular and careful medical monitoring. Older adults need a professional who understands the particularities of their body, who constantly reviews their list of medications, who questions the real need for each substance, experience and who provides clear and empathetic guidance on how, when, and why to take each medication. More than that, it is essential to involve family and caregivers in this process. It is necessary to create a support network that watches for warning signs, frequent falls, daytime sleepiness, behavioral changes, disorientation, and understands that these symptoms may not be due to age, but to poorly managed pharmacology. It is also essential to promote the rational use of medications. This means treating what needs to be treated with the lowest effective dose for the shortest time necessary. Whenever possible, non-pharmacological alternatives such as physical therapy, exercise, dietary adjustments, and psychological support should be sought to replace or complement medications. The goal is not to withdraw medication completely, but to use it consciously, respectfully, and accurately in a personalized manner. Because what is at stake is not just avoiding dizziness or a stumble, it is ensuring that older adults can live with clarity, energy, and autonomy. It is allowing them to walk safely, get out of bed steadily, and move around with confidence. Medication can cure, but it can also throw you off balance, literally. That is why every pill, every dose, every prescription must be looked at with the care that life in its most delicate phase demands. Behind every fall there is a story, a warning that was ignored, a passing discomfort that was swept under the rug, dizziness that was attributed to the heat or to not eating. Before the stumble, before the fall, before the impact with the ground, the body spoke. But, as often happens in old age, it was not heard. And this is perhaps one of the most common and dangerous mistakes in the journey of the elderly. The devaluation of the warning signs that the body itself offers. The human organism has ancestral wisdom. It doesn't just live, it communicates. And when that communication is disregarded, the risks accumulate like a storm slowly forming on the horizon, until without warning, it strikes. Many older adults live with the idea that feeling dizzy, weak in the legs, unsteady when standing up, or experiencing minor lapses in orientation are normal for their age. This belief, reinforced by culture, family members, and even some healthcare professionals, creates dangerous ground. By normalizing the abnormal, older adults begin to ignore fundamental signals that the body sends as cries for help. Balance is not lost overnight. It gradually deteriorates. A stumble today, a hand resting on the wall tomorrow, a chair that becomes a silent crutch the day after. And in each of these small adjustments is the reflection of a body trying to warn that something is not right. Dizziness, for example, is one of the most underestimated signs. Many people say, "Tom, it was just a little dizzy," without realizing that this symptom can be a harbinger of problems in the labyrinth, the part of the inner ear responsible for balance, changes in blood pressure, reactions to medications, or even early neurological failures. Weakness in the legs is also treated with contempt. "I'm just tired," some say, even when they notice difficulty getting up, climbing stairs, or walking in a straight line. These symptoms are the body's way of saying something needs attention, but out of pride, fear, or lack of information, they are ignored until it is too late. There is also an emotional refusal to acknowledge frailty. Many older adults resist accepting that their bodies are changing, that they no longer respond as quickly, that they need more time to adapt. This denial, while understandable from a human perspective, can be fatal from a functional standpoint. Pride prevents them from asking for help, sharing what they are feeling, or seeking guidance. And so older adults try to carry on as if everything were fine until a small imbalance, often at a mundane moment, such as reaching for an object, turning over in bed, or getting out of the bathroom, knocks them to the floor. This is where active listening becomes important. Not only listening to one's own body, but also to family members and caregivers. It is necessary to ask more questions, observe more, and be attentive and respectful. An older person who starts leaning on furniture, walking more slowly, hesitating when changing direction, or avoiding certain rooms in the house is, even if silently, sending signals that they have lost confidence in their own body. It is up to those around them to notice these subtle gestures and act before they become a tragedy waiting to happen. Paying attention to the body's signals does not mean making a fuss over every discomfort, but rather adopting a preventive and conscious attitude. It means keeping regular appointments, reporting symptoms even when they seem silly, undergoing periodic functional assessments, and seriously investigating dizziness, falls, or mild imbalances. It means understanding that aging does not have to be synonymous with abrupt decline, but rather a process of adaptation that can and should be conducted with dignity, support, and attention. In addition, it is essential to create a culture of self-care among older adults. Teach them to observe their bodies with care, to recognize signs that deserve attention, to value their physical intuition. The body warns us when something is out of place, and the sooner these signs are heard, the greater the chances of preserving autonomy, preventing falls, and maintaining quality of life. Prevention starts with the details: the foot that drags, the hand that seeks support, the breath that hesitates, the gaze that seeks balance. Perhaps the greatest challenge is to break the silence of the elderly who do not want to worry anyone, the silence of the family who thinks it's better not to touch that now, the silence of the healthcare system, which is still more reactive than preventive. Breaking this silence is urgent, because when the body whispers, it is still giving us time. When it screams, with a fall, a fracture, a hospitalization, the opportunity has already passed. Listening to the body is an act of respect. Responding to it is an act of care, and acting on these signs is an act of love for life, for dignity, for the safe journey of those who have already traveled so many paths. It is time to learn to listen.